He was a Marine veteran who thought his battles were over until one moment changed everything. When he saved a bullied girl, he never imagined she'd lead him back to the past he'd buried, and to the daughter he never knew he had. A loyal German shepherd, a mother's secret, and a miracle only God could have written. This story will move your soul. Sometimes, the greatest wars aren't fought on the battlefield, but inside the heart. Watch till the end, because what happens under that golden sunset will restore your faith in love, family, and second chances. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and comment if this story touched you, and may God bless everyone watching. The wind of early autumn brushed through the trees of Maplewood, Vermont, a quiet town tucked between golden hills and fading forests. The sky hung low, gray and heavy, hinting at the first breath of the coming cold season. Fallen leaves danced along the cracked sidewalk, swirling around a man walking slowly with a loyal companion by his side. Jake Harrison, 43 years old, carried the kind of presence that silenced noise around him. His broad shoulders and squared jaw spoke of years in the U.S. Marine Corps. His short-cropped dark hair was dusted with early gray, and faint scars along his temple told quiet stories of battles fought far away. His hazel eyes, once sharp and commanding, now carried something gentler, perhaps exhaustion, or the quiet ache of a man who had seen too much. Beside him trotted Rex, a 7-year-old German shepherd with black and tan fur and intelligent amber eyes. The dog's movements were precise, every step in rhythm with Jake's stride, as if they were still on patrol. Rex was trained for combat and rescue operations, fiercely loyal, disciplined, and distrustful of strangers. Jake often joked that Rex was more soldier than dog. It had been only a few months since Jake left the Marines. After 20 years of service, he returned home to Vermont hoping for peace, something he had not known since his youth. The adjustment was harder than he expected. Crowded places made him tense. Loud noises made him flinch. Nights were restless, haunted by echoes of helicopters and distant explosions. Maplewood was supposed to be quiet enough for healing, but the silence often felt like loneliness wrapped in fog. As he crossed the old iron bridge into town, he noticed the distant sound of yelling near the local middle school. His instincts sharpened immediately. Following the voices, he turned a corner and saw a group of 4 teenagers surrounding a smaller figure, a young girl pressed against a brick wall. They mocked her, tossing her backpack into a puddle and pulling at her hair. One of them, a tall boy with a baseball cap turned backward, snarled, "Where's your dad now, huh? Oh, right, you don't have one." The others laughed cruelly. Jake's jaw tightened. His voice, calm but deep, cut through the laughter like a blade. "That's enough." The boys turned. For a second, they froze. There was something intimidating about the man standing before them, his posture perfectly still, the kind of stance that only years of discipline could create. Rex stepped forward, baring his teeth slightly, his low growl sending a ripple of fear through the group. The leader tried to act tough. "Mind your business, old man." Jake took a single step closer. His eyes narrowed, not with anger, but with authority. "Walk away. Now." Rex let out a sharper growl, and that was enough. The boys backed off, muttering curses as they scattered. Silence settled again, except for the sound of the wind brushing fallen leaves. Jake turned to the girl. She was about 13, with shoulder-length brown hair and bright green eyes that shimmered between fear and relief. Her jacket was torn, and a small scrape bled on her knee. "You okay?" Jake asked gently. She nodded, wiping her tears with the back of her sleeve. "I'm fine. Thank you." Her voice was soft, timid. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lily," she replied. Jake smiled faintly. "Nice to meet you, Lily. I'm Jake, and this is Rex." At the sound of his name, Rex wagged his tail slightly, lowering his guard. To Jake's surprise, the usually stoic German shepherd stepped closer to the girl and nudged her hand gently. Lily giggled and petted his head. Jake frowned, half amused, half confused. Rex never did that. Not with strangers, especially kids. He offered to walk her home. The sun had begun to dip, casting long amber streaks across the quiet streets. As they walked, Lily started to talk more, about school, about her mom working long hours, about how the boys picked on her because she didn't have a father. Jake listened quietly, each word piercing deeper than he expected. Something in her voice, or maybe in her eyes, felt strangely familiar. When they reached the edge of town, Lily pointed to a small white house with blue shutters at the end of a gravel road. The place looked worn but cared for. Flower pots lined the porch, and a faded swing hung from the old maple tree. Jake stopped dead in his tracks. His breath caught. He knew this house. He had helped repaint that porch one summer long ago. The memory hit like lightning. "Lily, does your mom happen to be Emily Brooks?" he asked carefully. Lily's eyes widened. "Yes. You know my mom?" Jake's voice softened. "Yeah, a long time ago." Before he could process it further, the front door opened. Emily Brooks, now in her late 30s, stepped out, startled to see a stranger at her gate. She was tall and slender, with wavy chestnut hair tied loosely behind her shoulders and skin fair like porcelain, though the years had etched faint lines around her eyes. There was both strength and sorrow in her expression. She wore a light gray sweater, faded jeans, and an old wedding ring that seemed more symbolic than sentimental. When her gaze met Jake's, time seemed to stop. Recognition flashed across her face. Shock first, then disbelief, then something unspoken. "Jake?" she whispered, barely audible. He nodded slowly, his throat tight. "Hi, Emily. It's been a while." The air between them thickened with memories. Summer nights by the lake, laughter under fireworks, a goodbye at the bus stop when he left for boot camp. Emily's eyes glistened. "You're back," she said quietly. "After all these years." Jake gave a tired smile. "Didn't think I'd find myself back here. Guess fate had other plans." Rex barked once, breaking the tension. Emily looked down at the dog and smiled faintly. "You still with the Marines?" "No," Jake replied. "Retired, trying to learn how to be normal again." Emily looked at Lily, who was standing between them, gently stroking Rex's fur. "You found my daughter," she said softly. "She's been having a rough time at school." Jake nodded. "I noticed." He hesitated, studying both of them. The resemblance between the girl and his younger self was uncanny. The same nose, the same sharp chin. But he said nothing. Not yet. Emily invited him in for coffee, but Jake declined politely, saying he had to get Rex home before dark. As he turned to leave, Lily called out, "Thank you, Mr. Jake, and bye, Rex." The dog turned his head, wagging his tail once, as if acknowledging a new bond. Walking back down the dirt path, Jake felt something stirring in his chest. A mix of nostalgia, curiosity, and unease. Vermont's wind had turned colder, but for the first time in years, he felt a spark of warmth he couldn't quite explain. He looked at Rex, who trotted beside him, unusually cheerful. "You like that kid, huh?" Jake muttered. Rex barked softly, almost in agreement. Jake exhaled a long breath, his gaze lost in the fading sunset. "Yeah, me too." The first stars began to appear above Maplewood, faint but steady, just like the memories Jake thought he'd buried long ago. The following morning in Maplewood came with a pale mist rolling over the hills, veiling the town in a soft silver hue. Jake woke early as usual. Old habits from the Marines were hard to break. He brewed a pot of black coffee in his small cabin outside town, its wooden walls lined with medals, a folded flag, and a single framed photo of his Marine unit. Rex lay near the window, ears twitching at every distant sound. Jake's hand brushed the scar along his knuckle, remembering the firefight in Kandahar that left it there. The war had changed him, made him cautious, distrustful of promises, and always searching for purpose. Yet after yesterday, a strange feeling of warmth had returned, like an ember long buried under ash. He couldn't shake the image of Lily, her bright eyes, the way she smiled through her fear, the faint scar above her eyebrow that mirrored his own. It had to be coincidence, he told himself, but the thought wouldn't fade. Even Rex seemed affected. The dog lay unusually alert, tail wagging at every mention of her name. "You too, huh?" Jake muttered, sipping his coffee. "Don't tell me you're getting soft." Rex tilted his head as if in answer. Later that day, Jake decided to visit the town square for supplies. The local grocery store, Henderson's Market, was run by Tom Henderson, a burly man in his 50s with a salt and pepper beard and a wide belly that betrayed his love for homemade pies. Tom was friendly but blunt, a man who had lived his whole life in Maplewood and knew everyone's history. "Well, I'll be damned," Tom said as Jake walked in. "Jake Harrison back from the Corps. Heard you're settling out by Miller's Creek." Jake nodded with a polite smile. "Trying to, Tom. Still figuring out civilian life." Tom chuckled. "It ain't the same as the battlefield, but trust me, small towns got their own wars." As Jake grabbed a few groceries, he noticed Emily walking in with Lily. Emily wore a dark green coat and a gray scarf, her hair slightly damp from the mist. Lily held a sketchbook close to her chest, glancing shyly at Jake. "Morning," Emily said cautiously. "Morning," Jake replied, offering a faint smile. "How's she doing?" "Better," Emily said, softening a little. "The school's counselor is talking to the kids involved. Maplewood High can be cruel to anyone who's different." Emily paused, hesitated, then said, "Lily really wanted to thank you again. She wouldn't stop talking about Rex." Jake looked down at the dog, who was now wagging his tail like an excited pup. "He remembers friends," Jake said with a grin. Lily knelt down to hug Rex, and the big shepherd licked her cheek affectionately. Tom, behind the counter, watched the scene and whispered to Jake as Emily moved away to pick up some items. "You know, that girl's a spitting image of you when you were her age. Same eyes. Strange, huh?" Jake forced a chuckle, brushing it off, but Tom's words lingered like smoke. In the days that followed, Jake started seeing Lily more often. Sometimes she waited at the corner where he walked Rex, just to wave hello. Other times, she'd come by his cabin after school, shyly asking if she could play fetch with Rex. Jake couldn't say no. He found himself teaching her simple things: how to stand tall when afraid, how to defend herself if someone grabbed her arm, and how to breathe slowly when nervous. Lily was a quick learner, curious and brave. She talked about wanting to be a veterinarian one day, and Jake found himself smiling more than he had in years. One afternoon, while helping her with her school project about family legacies, Jake noticed something. Lily had drawn a Marine holding a German shepherd, standing by an American flag. "That's you and Rex," she said innocently. "Mom told me you were a soldier." Jake's heart skipped a beat. "She told you about me?" he asked carefully. Lily nodded. "Just a little. She said you were brave, and that you used to make her laugh." Jake looked away, pretending to fix Rex's collar, hiding the storm behind his calm expression. Later that evening, Jake stopped by Emily's house, carrying Lily's forgotten sketchbook. Emily opened the door, looking surprised but not unwelcoming. Inside, the home was warm and filled with small details: paintings, old records, and a framed photo of Emily and Lily by a lake. "You've built a good life," Jake said softly. Emily folded her arms, wary. "I've tried. It wasn't easy." Her voice held traces of bitterness and exhaustion. He hesitated, then spoke. "Emily, does she know who her father is?" Emily froze. "Jake, don't," she whispered. "Please." Her tone cut sharp. "Lily isn't your concern." Jake's jaw tightened. "I didn't come here to make trouble, but if she's being bullied because she doesn't have a dad, I can help her. She deserves the truth." Emily turned away, her shoulders trembling. "She's happy now. That's all that matters." She turned back to face him, eyes moist but firm. "Let it go, Jake. Some things are better left where they belong, behind us." Jake looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "If that's what you want." He handed her the sketchbook and turned to leave. Rex hesitated on the porch, glancing back at Lily's window where a small light glowed. Inside, Lily sat drawing again, humming softly. Rex let out a low whine, reluctant to go. Jake patted his head. "Come on, buddy, time to go." As they walked away, Jake's mind replayed the past. Letters he wrote during the war but never sent. A goodbye kiss at the bus stop he never thought would be the last. Somewhere deep down, he knew fate wasn't done with him or Emily. The wind carried the scent of pine and rain, and far behind him, a curtain shifted as Emily watched silently through the window, torn between fear and longing. A week had passed since Jake last visited Emily's house. He had been trying to keep his distance, though his thoughts never left Lily. But one cold afternoon, as he repaired the fence outside his cabin, a sharp knock came at his door. Standing there was Mrs. Harper, the school nurse, a woman in her late 50s with short gray curls, kind blue eyes behind large square glasses, and a voice that carried both calm and urgency. "Jake, it's Lily," she said, breathless. "She collapsed at school. Emily asked me to find you." Jake didn't hesitate. Within minutes, he and Rex were in his old Ford truck, speeding down the narrow road toward Maplewood General Hospital. The dog whined anxiously in the back seat, sensing the tension. The hospital stood at the edge of town, a 2-story brick building that smelled faintly of antiseptic and pine. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed quietly. Jake rushed through the corridor, the heavy soles of his boots echoing off the floor. At the emergency ward, he saw Emily sitting on a plastic chair, her face pale, her hands clasped tightly. Her eyes were swollen from crying. "Jake," she whispered, standing as he approached. "She just fainted during class. The doctors said something about severe anemia, but they need to run more tests." Her voice trembled. Jake placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "She'll be okay," he said softly, though his chest tightened. Moments later, a doctor entered the waiting area. Dr. Alan Morris, a lean man in his early 40s, with neatly combed sandy hair and sharp, analytical eyes, carried a clipboard and wore the calm authority of someone used to making quick decisions. "Ms. Brooks," he began, "your daughter's blood levels are dangerously low. She'll need a transfusion immediately, but she has a very rare blood type, AB negative. We're checking our donors, but it might take time." Jake froze. AB negative? He repeated quietly. The doctor nodded. Yes, it's found in less than 1% of the population. Are you family? Emily quickly interjected. He's a friend. Jake ignored the sting in that word. I have the same blood type, he said. Test me. If I'm compatible, I'll donate. Dr. Morris nodded. That could save her life. Follow me. As Jake walked down the sterile hallway for testing, Emily called out, Jake, wait, maybe we should... But her words trailed off. Her face was pale, conflicted, like someone fighting two truths at once. The test results came back fast. Jake was indeed a perfect match. But when Dr. Morris approached Emily for consent, she refused. No, she said firmly. Find another donor. The doctor looked confused. Ma'am, we don't have much time. I said no, she snapped, tears welling in her eyes. Jake's patience cracked. Emily, what the hell are you doing? She turned away, whispering, You can't give her your blood. Why not? He demanded. You'd rather let her die? Her lips trembled, but she said nothing. Rex, lying near Jake's feet, let out a soft whine as if feeling his master's frustration. The tension was thick. Emily finally sank into a chair, burying her face in her hands. Please, Jake, just go home, she murmured. But he didn't move. Hours passed as doctors searched for another donor. Jake sat in silence, fists clenched, eyes fixed on the red "No Visitors" sign above Lily's room. Every instinct in him screamed to help her. When night fell, Jake left the hospital, but not for home. He drove instead to the Maplewood Health Records Department, a small annex connected to the town's clinic. The receptionist on duty, Mr. Clark, a thin, balding man with nervous eyes and a coffee stain on his shirt, looked startled when Jake walked in wearing his old Marine jacket. I need access to Lily Brooks's medical record, Jake said quietly but firmly. Sir, that's confidential, Mr. Clark stammered. Jake leaned closer, his tone calm but commanding. This is about a child's life. You don't want to stand in the way of that. Something in Jake's gaze, perhaps the soldier's authority or the desperation in his eyes, made Mr. Clark hesitate. After a pause, he turned to the computer and printed a short summary. This is all I can show you, he whispered. Jake read the page under the dim yellow light. Blood type, AB negative, genetic marker, matches paternal chromosome pattern identical to donor profile, Jake Harrison. His pulse raced. He didn't need more proof. Emily had been lying. He clenched the paper, fury and heartbreak mixing in his chest. He returned to the hospital near midnight. The corridors were quiet. Lights dimmed for the night shift. Emily was still there, sitting alone outside Lily's room. Her eyes lifted when she saw him, already knowing what he'd done. You looked, didn't you? She whispered. Jake dropped the paper on her lap. You should have told me. Tears welled in her eyes. I wanted to protect her, and you. I didn't know if you'd ever come back. When you left, I thought the war would take you forever. She choked back a sob. When I found out I was pregnant, I couldn't bear to lose both of you. Jake's anger melted into silence. He looked through the window at Lily, pale and sleeping under the soft hospital light. Rex lying quietly by her bed after sneaking past the nurses. She's mine, he said softly. Emily nodded, trembling. Yes, she's yours. At that moment, Dr. Morris appeared again, relief washing over his face. We found a match from a donor list in Burlington. The blood's on its way. Emily broke down in tears, thanking him. Jake simply leaned against the wall, feeling both shattered and whole. For years he had fought wars for his country. Now he was facing the one battle that truly mattered, earning back the family he never knew he had. The rain had stopped by dawn, leaving the world washed clean. Outside Maplewood General, puddles shimmered under the early light. Jake sat on a bench near the hospital entrance, his hands clasped tightly, his uniform jacket damp from the night air. He hadn't slept. Every tick of the wall clock echoed like a countdown inside him. The doors finally opened, and Dr. Morris, looking weary yet composed, approached him. "The transfusion worked," he said quietly. "She's stable now. You can see her." For a moment, Jake couldn't breathe. The tension that had coiled in him for days released all at once. He rose slowly, his knees stiff from hours of waiting, and followed the doctor down the quiet hallway. The room smelled faintly of disinfectant and lavender, the kind of scent hospitals use to hide the pain. Lily lay pale but peaceful on the bed, an IV line taped to her small arm. Her brown hair framed her face, and a soft blush was returning to her cheeks. Beside her, Emily sat asleep in a chair, dark circles under her eyes, her fingers still clutching Lily's hand. Rex, who had somehow been allowed to stay, rested by the foot of the bed, his head on his paws. He looked up as Jake entered, tail thumping gently against the floor as if to say, "She's safe now." Jake stood there for a long moment, the sight of them filling a void he didn't realize was so deep. Emily stirred and looked up, her voice hoarse. "You didn't leave." Jake shook his head. "Couldn't." Their eyes met, not as two people bound by pain anymore, but as parents united by something larger. Hours later, Lily woke up. Her eyes blinked open slowly, adjusting to the light. When she saw Jake standing there, she smiled faintly. "Hey," she whispered. Jake stepped closer, his voice trembling. "Hey there, soldier," she giggled weakly. "Mom told me everything." Emily sat beside her, brushing her hair back. Lily looked at Jake, her green eyes bright with tears. "So you're my dad?" Jake knelt beside the bed, unable to speak for a moment. "Yeah," he finally said. "I'm your dad." She reached out a trembling hand and touched his face. "I always wondered what it would be like." His eyes burned as he took her hand and pressed it gently against his cheek. "Guess we're finding out together." The room grew quiet except for the steady beep of the monitor. Emily's tears fell silently, but they were no longer the tears of guilt. They were release. Rex stood, placing his paws on the side of the bed, licking Lily's hand. She laughed softly. "He's happy too," she said. Jake smiled through his tears. "He's been guarding you like a soldier on duty." A nurse entered to check Lily's vitals. Nurse Carla, a short woman in her early 30s with curly auburn hair and a gentle, no-nonsense demeanor, smiled warmly. "Looks like someone's getting stronger," she said, adjusting the IV line. She gave Jake a knowing look before leaving quietly, closing the door behind her. When evening came, the sky outside turned golden. Jake sat by the window while Emily helped Lily eat her soup. For the first time in years, laughter filled the room. Soft, hesitant, but real. Emily looked at Jake. "You saved her life," she said. "I almost lost both of you once. I couldn't let that happen again." Jake's gaze softened. "You did what you thought was right. I can't blame you for that." He paused, voice lower. "But I wish you'd told me." Emily nodded slowly. "So do I." The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was healing. Jake took a deep breath. "When I left for Afghanistan, I promised myself I'd come back to something worth fighting for. I just didn't know it would take me this long to find it." Emily smiled faintly. her voice barely above a whisper. Maybe we both needed to lose each other to understand what we had. Lily watched them with a sleepy smile. You two sound like the movies, she said, her eyes half closing. Jake chuckled softly. That's because we had a pretty dramatic story. She reached for both their hands, her small fingers gripping tightly. Can we start over? Like a real family? Jake looked at Emily, who nodded through tears. Yeah, sweetheart, he said. From now on, no more goodbyes. As night fell, the lights dimmed to a soft glow. Lily drifted to sleep, her breathing steady and calm. Jake sat back, his arm resting around Emily's shoulders as she leaned into him. For the first time in years, he felt peace, a kind that came not from silence, but from belonging. Rex curled up at their feet, sighing deeply, his tail twitching once before he fell asleep. Outside, the storm clouds had cleared, revealing a sky full of stars. Jake looked out the window and murmured quietly, "Thank you, Lord." He didn't need medals or parades anymore. This, his family, was the victory he'd waited for. 2 months after the long nights at Maplewood General, spring returned to Vermont. The snow had melted, revealing green pastures and lilac trees beginning to bloom. The world felt lighter, as if the whole town was breathing again. Jake stood in front of the Maplewood Middle School auditorium, wearing a simple gray jacket and clean jeans. His posture was still that of a Marine, straight-backed, firm, yet gentler now. Beside him, Rex sat obediently, his fur glistening in the sunlight, tail sweeping the floor like a calm metronome. The dog seemed older, his muzzle silvered, but his eyes were alive with loyalty and pride. Jake had spent the past weeks helping Emily repaint her porch, fixing small things around their home, and spending as much time as possible with Lily. They'd grown inseparable. She followed him everywhere, curious about his time in the Marines, asking about courage and fear. It was Lily's idea for him to speak at school. "You could teach them, Dad," she had said, about how to be brave without hurting others. The word Dad still caught him off guard, but each time it warmed him from within. The principal, Mr. Daniels, greeted him at the door. He was a tall man in his early 50s, with thinning blonde hair, glasses perched on his sharp nose, and a voice that carried the calm authority of someone used to handling chaos. "Jake, I'm glad you agreed to this," he said. "The students have been looking forward to it, especially after what happened last semester." Jake nodded. "If my story can help even one kid think twice before hurting someone else, it's worth it." The auditorium buzzed with chatter as rows of students filled the seats. Lily sat in the front row, her hands folded neatly in her lap. The boys who had once bullied her, Ryan, Cole, and Mason, sat a few rows back, avoiding her gaze. Ryan, the ringleader, was a lanky 14-year-old with sandy hair and freckles, his shoulders slumped now with guilt. Cole, heavier set, had a bruised sense of pride that masked his regret. Mason, smaller and quiet, looked the most remorseful, twisting his hands nervously. Jake stepped up to the microphone. The room quieted. His voice was steady, deep, and calm. "When I was your age," he began, "I thought strength meant never showing weakness. I thought it meant fighting back, proving myself. But after 20 years in the Marines, I learned that real strength is restraint, choosing compassion when anger feels easier." He paused, glancing toward Lily, who smiled proudly. "In the service, I saw people risk their lives for strangers. That's courage. Standing up for what's right. That's courage. And forgiving someone who's hurt you." He looked at the boys in the back. That's the hardest kind of courage there is. The silence that followed was heavy but powerful. Then, unexpectedly, Ryan stood. His voice trembled. "Mr. Harrison, I'm sorry for everything we did to Lily." His eyes filled with tears he tried to hide. "We were stupid. We thought making others feel small would make us feel big." The other boys nodded, one by one. Jake looked at them for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "It takes guts to admit that," he said. "I forgive you, but what matters most is that you learn from it. Promise me you'll look out for others instead." "We will," Ryan said, his voice breaking slightly. The auditorium erupted in soft applause. Lily's eyes shone, her smile wide. Emily, standing by the doorway, brushed a tear from her cheek. Jake glanced at her and smiled, quiet, knowing. After the assembly, the school announced a new initiative called Veteran Mentor, where retired soldiers like Jake would visit schools to teach about discipline, empathy, and teamwork. The local newspaper even sent Clara Jenkins, a young journalist with short blonde hair and a notebook always in hand, to cover the story. She asked Jake for a quote. He smiled modestly. "We all have battles," he said. "Some you fight on the field, some inside your heart. The goal isn't to win, it's to come home whole." Clara nodded, impressed, scribbling the words. That evening, the Harrison family drove up the hill overlooking Maplewood. The sky blazed with orange and gold as the sun sank behind the ridges. Lily skipped ahead, laughing, while Rex ran beside her, barking happily. Emily and Jake walked slower, their hands brushing. "You really did it," Emily said softly. "You turned everything that hurt you into something good." Jake looked at her, eyes glinting under the fading light. "Maybe that's what grace is, getting the chance to rewrite your own story." They reached the top of the hill. The wind carried the scent of wildflowers. Jake looked at the horizon and spoke quietly, almost to himself. "Sometimes God doesn't give us what we want right away. He waits until we're ready to understand what a gift it really is." Emily slipped her arm through his. "And now?" she asked. "Now," Jake said with a small smile, "I'm ready." Rex barked twice, chasing the last ray of sunlight as it stretched across the meadow. Lily ran back toward them, arms open wide. The four of them stood together, father, mother, daughter, and dog, bathed in the warm glow of twilight. In that quiet moment, surrounded by light and laughter, Jake realized that true redemption didn't come from forgetting the past, but from learning to forgive it. Sometimes, God doesn't answer our prayers right away, not because He doesn't hear us, but because He's preparing us. Jake thought his years in battle had taken everything from him: love, family, peace. But God had been quietly working, guiding every step, every tear, every lonely night, until the right moment came for him to find his way home again. The miracle wasn't in the blood transfusion that saved Lily's life, or even in the reunion of a broken family. It was in the healing of hearts, in learning to forgive, to love again, and to believe that no story is too broken for God to rewrite. Just like Jake, each of us carries scars, but those scars can become reminders of how far grace has carried us. So if you're watching this now, remember, maybe what you're praying for hasn't arrived yet, because God is still shaping you to receive it. Trust His timing, believe in His plan, because sometimes the delay is the miracle. May God bless everyone watching this story. May He bring healing, peace, and reunion to every heart that needs it. If this story touched you, please share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment to tell us what moment moved you most. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories of faith, love, and redemption. And may God's grace always walk beside you and your family.